But okay, here's James. Here's a question. We talked through turkey camp. This was a hot topic for us every night. So if you could only pick one to hunt the rest of your life, would it be an elk-sized turkey or a turkey-sized elk?
Turkey-sized elk for sure. Yeah, that sounds like so much fun. But no question in my mind.
The opposite. Could you imagine a velociraptor that gobbled?
Here it comes.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I mean, I think we tried that once historically, but no, man, that sounds bad. That sounds scary to me. And I've hunted lots of scary stuff, and you know that I'm glad I did that. But yeah, oh my gosh, a 20-pound elk, that sounds amazing. These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. The Six Ranch Podcast is brought to you by Sig Sauer. Sig is a leading provider and manufacturer of firearms, electro-optics, ammunition, air guns, and suppressors. For over 250 years, Sig Sauer Inc. has evolved and thrived by blending American ingenuity, German engineering, and Swiss precision. Today, Sig Sauer is synonymous with industry-leading quality and innovation, which has made it the brand of choice amongst the U.S. military, the global defense community, law enforcement, competitive shooters, hunters, and responsible citizens. Sig Sauer is also a premier provider of elite firearms instruction and tactical training at the Sig Sauer Academy located in New Hampshire. For more information about Sig Sauer and its complete line of products, visit sigsauer.com. Gentlemen, welcome. It's good to see your faces. I wish that we were here together. I've got with me Kody Kellom and Trent Fisher from Born and Raised Outdoors, some good friends of mine and terrific elk hunters. How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Doing well.
Coming. It's getting close.
Yeah, I was just talking to Eric a few moments ago, and he's like, "Can you believe it's elk season?" And it's in the realization that it's still not elk season yet because there's too much to do, and August is the end of it is near. So
I guided an elk hunt this weekend because we've got rifle cow seasons that start August 1st. And that was my first one of the year. But still, like, even as I'm like packing up optics and like trying to scramble around to find stuff that I haven't touched since last season, it still didn't feel like it's not really elk season. I mean, we're elk hunting. Yeah, of course we're elk hunting, but it's not elk season until it's archery season.
We definitely have had those cool, crisp mornings though that feel, fall is in the air, it's on the near, so it's feeling good.
Tell you what, man, it's a strange year. Of course, we're in a historic drought, but the ground that I was just hunting on and checking out, I haven't seen it since, June or so. I've never seen feed ever that's eaten down the way it is right now. The elk have consumed some like dried out annual grasses that typically they won't touch ever. Like they ate the cheatgrass, they ate Medusa head, they ate everything. And the water levels in ponds and wallows and things like that, they're either gone or they're lower than what I see kind of at the end of September before we start getting that October precip that we can typically count on. But it is a different ball game out there, and the elk don't look very good. The deer don't look very good either.
That's what I was kind of wondering. How does that look for herds?
They're stressed. They're a bit thin. The calf recruitment is a lot lower from what I can tell, and that's pretty limited observation, but it looks like calf recruitment is already pretty low. I've got some concerns. And then the elk behavior was really interesting. They're much, much more skittish than I'm used to seeing. And you can always chalk that up to a number of things. It's never just one thing.
Predation.
coming up on a full moon. There's a storm rolling in. There's a lot more predation, and I think that the stress from being malnourished and limited water sources makes their movements a little bit more predictable, which is a good thing for predators, bad thing for elk. But my hunter was like, well, this is great. They haven't been hunted since last season. They get hunted every day of their life, just not by people. So.
Were you guys successful?
Of course. Yeah. We're super successful. We had a terrific time. We did not kill an elk, if that's what you mean. But we did a little bit of shooting, and
okay. Say no more. I got you.
Tried to straighten the trigger out with the safety on one time.
Yeah, that works.
Just pull hard. You can pull through that.
You can pull through safety.
You can pull through that.
When it breaks, it breaks.
Just got to control your breathing.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Take a protein shake or something.
Yeah, there you go.
No, it's interesting. Like you said, the year, I mean, we've been struggling here locally. We're hunting a new area, and Trent's put a bunch of time in, and it's just like elk are not where we thought they should be yet. And it's a little concerning. I mean, there's definitely not the population base. We have not found the concentration that we thought we would by now. So
yeah. I mean, right now, I don't know quite where they are, but I'll figure it out. It's the great game, right? We figure things out, and that's why we survived as a species, and they survived as a species because they're hard to figure out.
And I think you see that kind of that trigger flip a little bit. Like we're talking about dates. I think, and I don't know when you want to source into this, but like the 6th through the 13th, there is that flip of elk that, it's like, you don't see them, you don't see them. And then pretty soon it's just boom, they show up and they're doing their thing. Right. And it's like, where in the world have these things been? They're like ghosts. And then pretty soon the circus is on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's a hormonal thing. Right. And at the risk of giving a comparison that puts my life in danger, but been around, a woman who's pregnant, and sometimes moods can change rapidly, and even like cravings, right? Like really strong, strange cravings can occur with almost a violence like that. That's hormonal, and that's what's going on with elk too. As the daylight changes and the temperature changes and the food quality changes, like they're feeling things that cause them to act very differently than they do the rest of the year. But this is an elk series, and we are talking about hunting the Rocky Mountain elk, or the Roosevelt elk, from September 6th through 13th. This episode's coming out on the 6th. You guys have hunted elk for how long now?
Long time.
Since a tag holder, I think this is like 26 or 27 seasons now, I think.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
So, but between the three of us, well over, a lot of days, a lot of days of hunting. And it's not just the years, right? It's, it's the amount of time that you guys spend hunting, because you're hunting a lot of states every year. You're either hunting or traveling every day of archery season, and then some of the days of rifle season in many states. And you've been exposed to elk behavior and elk situations in more ways than just about anybody I know. And that's given you a big amount of data to base your experiences and predictions off of. So let's, generically talk about this. September 6th, like, what's the plan?
I mean, for us, and I would say a lot of plans do change throughout the season, but the base core of what we do doesn't differ a drastic difference until we find the elk. For us, it's that search, and things may play out different as the rut kicks on and how those bulls react. But our biggest thing from day one is to cover as much ground as possible, to locate, use based on, what you're seeing for sign, but for us, vocal, is that connection that we're trying to make with an elk. So we're going to go cover, like I said, on these ridges and locate, bugle, cow call, locate, bugle, cow call, keep moving and moving until we finally get a response. And that really doesn't change. I mean, depending on the country dictates that of sound. A lot of times we use our eyes if we can glass in country, but sound is our tool of location.
Well, one thing I want to ask you about, we hear about covering ground a lot, and that's something that we talk about. And I think maybe we've done a bad job of explaining what that means, because I see a lot of guys who say, you just got to cover ground. And then they go out there and they just hike and they hike and they hike and they hike, or they ride their dirt bike or their mountain bike or their e-bike, like whatever they're doing, they're just covering distance. But that's not it. Like, you're covering distance and then stopping intermittently. Like, you have to be doing it for a reason. Traveling for the sake of traveling doesn't get you elk unless they're standing in the road, and at which point you probably just scared them and blew those elk up.
That's it. Kody said, as far as like traveling, as far as covering ground, we are using the bugle to be our guide at that point. So honestly, you make a good point. It's like, do you just take off on a bike and just go? Sometimes we do, usually that's at night a lot of times, and we're covering ground on the road itself. And that's a different way of covering ground than obviously boots on the ground, hiking somewhere. But we are bugling, I would say conservatively every 200 yards. Every 200 yards traveled. So, and a lot of that's going to depend on how dense the vegetation is. Like Roosevelt stuff, there's so many nooks and crannies and pockets, and the forest is so thick that the sound doesn't travel that far. So we are actually covering ground. When we talk about that, we're covering as much ground as we can verbally hear, as we think that our bugle is going to travel. So if we figure that we can bugle and get out there 150 yards of sound, then we're going to cover that much ground and stop again before we call again. And I think it's good for people to go out with your buddy, and because everybody thinks a bugle reaches for 2 miles, go out with your buddy, get in the woods and run up ahead of him and just say, hey, rip one off and let me hear what it sounds like. You will be shocked at what you don't hear. The bugles do not travel as far as people think they do. And that's why, like, we talk about, oh, what do you want? Do you want a cloudy day? Do you want a stormy day? Do you want a windy day? We want super cold temperatures, and we want super clear skies, so that crisp sound travels the furthest. That's what we're looking for when we talk about moving ground and stuff. We're talking about just going a ways to where our bugles can reach.
Yeah. And to add on that, it's just like covering the right ground, right? Yeah. So it's having a plan based on, okay, if I work this ridge top or this ridge system and we go, maybe it's an out and back, it's not a loop. Like, we're going to go down the right-hand side of this ridge and bounce back and forth. And then, or we'll drop down off that ridge top side hill at just above bench level, make a long hunt all the way out around the ridge, and then hunt our way back on the other side of the ridge. And so we're using those topography features versus I'm going to hike as hard as I can down this canyon, across the canyon, and up. It's like you could cover that ground more effectively and efficiently in the manner of coming down a finger, coming back around, and cover twice as much of the area with less physical exertion, where you're not exhausted and you're not. So day 2, I'm going to sleep in this morning, type scenario. So,
hunting with intent, right?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that with, any aspect of recreation where, whether you're trying to catch a fish or anything. Like, the dudes that just cast and beat water, like, yeah, they're going to catch some fish, but the guy that looks hard and goes, oh, there's a micro seam right there, I'm going to run a drift through that, that's a more successful angler. And there's a lot of similarities between fishing and trying to find that bull that's willing to hook up, that's willing to play the game with you, right? Yeah. So when you call, how long are you waiting? And is that a set thing, or is that situationally dependent?
Everybody does it a little bit different. What we go through is kind of a sequence, especially like that time of year. the bulls probably already started bugling a little bit. They've started feeling their oats. They might even have a herd already. They might, have had their ass kicked by another elk already, or you never know. We always talk about, you never know what happens the night before, so you don't know what you're coming into that morning or that day. But what we do is we do a sequence. So sometimes we'll first start out with just a high, just as high pitch as we can, and sit there and wait. And we don't wait that long before we are going to throw out another bugle, which might be followed by a chuckle. And there's certain elk it's the weird thing about elk is some of them will only respond to this sound. Like you hit this note, some will only respond to that note, or some, if you don't chuckle, they will not bugle back, which is really weird in the realm of things, but it makes the dance so much more fun, because it's like, okay, and now I know what his button is. Now let's push that button enough to get him in here and shoot him. So we'll do like bugles, and we'll do a bugle and a chuckle. And usually we start out with some cow calls in between. Act like a herd. That's elk make noise. They are very, very loud. So break something and smash a stick against a tree, or rub a tree, or anything that you can do to sound realistic. A herd is very, very, very loud and vocal when they're not spooked, when they're just in a resting state. They're always talking back and forth. So do exactly that to make them feel comfortable, to entice them to bugle back.
Yeah, and that date-wise, between that 6th and 13th, those elk may not bugle, but they may be coming. And so we've definitely had the scenario. We'll slow play some stuff. We know that there's elk around here. We're in a lot of fresh sign. We've maybe seen them there the day before. We'll slide into some of those spots, call a little bit softer, and next thing you know, you'll hear a stick break. Like, there's been numerous times that we've not heard a bull bugle. We heard a stick break, and we set up on that stick break. And it definitely, like, early before, say, the September 15th mark, there's more likelihood of those elk coming to investigate what's going on, because they're like you talked about the hormonal change. There's been a cow that's been in heat. They're like, hey, things are different around here, but they may not come in full charge screaming their face off in that time period. So I would say earlier in the season, in that date range, we play things a little bit slower than we do on September 18th, so.
Now, a lot of us have been around gunfire. Trent used to cut trees for a living, running chainsaws, heavy equipment. There's a lot of elk hunters out there who have not the best hearing that they used to anymore. And I definitely have days.
That was an arrow right at me, wasn't it? That was just shots fired.
Hey, you and me both, man.
You're not wrong.
I mean, tanks are loud, but yeah, and I have days when I can hear better than others, but sometimes, like, if I hear an elk really well, like, you should probably knock your arrow, because it's getting super serious. And trying to determine an elk's location from its bugle is really hard, really, really hard. I think people underestimate that, and they also, unless they go out and they do that bugling back and forth and understand, that elk are probably louder than most of us when we're calling. If you hear a bugle close to you, it shakes you. That's a different thing. I feel like a lot of people set up a little bit too early. If you do actually have a bull bugling at you, but that investigation thing, that's tricky. And I've definitely seen that a lot of times where, I called for a while and left, and now I'm looking back at that ridge where I was an hour ago, and there's an elk sniffing the ground, like, I think we've all done that.
Yeah. Or you give it the token 15 minutes and like, maybe that was just a squirrel, and you take a step over the rise and blow a bull out. Like, that's it's definitely been the case.
Do you think they're stepping on that stick on purpose? Is that a form of communication?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that elk can be sneaky when they want to be sneaky.
Yeah.
And then elk will normal just doing their thing. They're just doing their thing. But I definitely see that when they want to be quiet, they can slip and, be intentful on that.
James, you brought up a good like hearing a bugle and the location of the bugle. And that's our biggest thing as far as like if we can pinpoint that bugle, then we can start to really put together a whole playbook of, okay, how are we going to kill this thing? Where's the thermals? What's going on? If we can pinpoint exactly where that bugle came from. And what we'll do a lot of times, because we hunt in bigger groups, which is an advantage for us, is we'll take guys and the first guy will be bugling out this way. The other two guys will turn there a little bit, to actually for directional purposes, because you have no idea how many times we'll hear a bugle and two guys will point this way. One guy will point 180, the direct opposite way of both the guys. And you're like, how? And then we'll look at each other and like, what's your percentage? How confident are you that that's where it was? And then they'll go, 80%. I'm sure it was this way. And we're like, all right, that's probably the way it was. But it's kind of, it helps us by having so many people in our crew to decipher that out sometimes.
How do you determine when you want to have the last word or when you want the elk to have the last word?
How far away they are.
Okay.
And it depends on how many people as well. So we get a ton of questions of, hey, I'm hunting by myself. Is this even possible? Because when they watch us on film, we hardly ever hunt by ourselves. And so we have the advantage of having a caller back and being able to just keep that bull going right to the shot of impact. Whereas if you're alone, you need to know when to shut up. And that's a big, big thing as far as, and we talked about sticks breaking and, giveaways, I guess, that you would have from elk as far as coming in. And you need to know when to be quiet. And elk are amazing. Like I said, we have a tough time pinpointing them. They know from that bugle exactly where we're standing. They know that they live it. They do it every single day. So we've had a lot of times where you bugle and they'll be 300 yards and a bull will walk directly to where your feet are just from that one bugle. So we've had that numerous times where they know where you're at. And that's why, we always say get on their level, because if you're up on a bench, they're only going to come so far. And if they're above you, they're only going to come so far. They want to see. They've got all these things. They kind of try to smell you, see you, and hear you. They've already heard you, and they're going to try to get wind possibly, but they want to see what they're looking at. And they're not dumb. That's why so many people say, well, he came 80 yards. He wouldn't come any further. You hear that all the time. It's just he wanted to verify what was being said down there with the actual body of an elk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are looking for like, what's the magic formula, right? What do you do every single time you hear an elk? To that answer, there's like not many call-ins are the same. I mean, there's some similarities amongst them, but there's micro differences between each and every one. And it's time in the field and experience, knowing like, okay, well, this has happened in the past. So maybe I could do this. Well, that didn't work. Then I've got another trick up my sleeve over here that I'm going to try to employ on that calling sequence. So I think it really is variable on a lot of different circumstances that, there isn't like you bugle here, then you give a challenge bugle, and then, you cut him off and if he answers to the cow call, you cut him off again, then he's coming. Like there's definitely not a formula of how it's definitely the art form of the dance per se as on the strategy side of it. So.
Yeah, it is such an interesting game, and you'll get it wrong much more than you'll get it right. So how do you learn from the times that you get it wrong? Like, how do you turn that into a positive experience that you can build off of rather than a frustration that, takes you farther away from success?
I think the big thing there is just to talk about it. Like, what did go wrong? Identify those things, understand the situation and what unfolded and where things went awry. I think that's number one, just acknowledging that, going through it and understanding it. So you do, take account versus like, oh, better luck next time. Let's move on and go find another one.
And that goes for everything too. That goes for business. That goes for just human nature. I think anything, I mean, if there's something that you're working towards and it doesn't work out the first time, take a couple steps back, kind of reevaluate and say, what went wrong there? Why didn't it work? And then try to map out those things so you don't do them next time.
Yeah. And within that, it could just be that like that was the wrong currency for that bull. Like you could try that same thing again, or what feels like the same thing again on another elk, one ridge over, and it works.
Or it's the 6th through the 13th, and it should have been the 14th through the 22nd, right?
You know, my favorite days to kill elk, like my most successful days, tend to be somewhere between the 9th and the 14th.
Oh yeah.
You know, my calling style, you know, the things that I do, the places that I hunt, like those are the days that I'm really confident that I can call in a bull during those days and get him killed if I've got the right weather and the right moon and all those things. Like, you know, if you get too close to the rut, it becomes really challenging, really challenging to actually get a bull to move. You know, it's exciting hunting, but man, it can be tough. The 6th, gosh, I think right in there somewhere, like one of the best calling experiences of my life was like the 6th or the 7th. And I ended up calling in half a dozen bulls to my client, and he never moved his feet. And he had those bulls between like 15 and 30 yards, and they just came in one after another. And we'd gotten close to a wallow where a bunch of these bulls were, you know, just kind of playing the social game, figuring out who each other were. And I was able to call in one after the next. And every single one of those bulls wanted something different. One of them wanted chuckles. One of them wanted raking. One of them wanted cow calls. One of them wanted calf calls. And kind of as I went through like the different tools in my bag, that one of those tools worked for every single one of those elk. And it was so neat. And I think, you know, that client's hunted all over the world. He's hunted his whole life. And that's a special experience and memory for him too, to have that and just remember standing there and getting to shop through all these bulls and kill none of them. And he drew his bow on every single one of them. And every time I was like, give it to him, you know. I was so excited. But at the end of it, like it was just a really special night. And you can have those nights during these days in the season. I think it can be some of the just most fun out there.
Yeah, I think the one thing that last year I hunted in Wyoming from the opener September 1st, and our buddy Ward from Hunting Public, he killed on the 12th. So we got like we hunted a pretty small area, and it was the first time where I really got to watch the development of the rut activity and see everything. We were able to glass these bulls, and I mean there was a bachelor group of 6 bulls on the first that were all nice, like very mature bulls all together doing their thing. And by the end of it on the 12th, things finally all split up. They had cows. They were no longer brothers at the frat house. I mean, they were on the prowl hard fighting. So I think you just never know. Is it going to be the 5th or the 6th? Is it going to be the 9th or 10th where you wake up that morning just feels a little bit different and things, you know, are different in the woods?
So I have a question for you. If I could only hunt one moon phase, it would be a quarter waxing moon. That's my most confident moon phase. But I don't get the luxury of being able to pick moon phases because I hunt the entire season just like you guys do. Do you have one phase of the moon cycle that is your confidence amount of illumination, or do you not even think about it?
Don't even think about it. No, it's one of those things we get asked that a lot too. And it's like, go hunting whenever you can. What we do is because a lot of times, you know, for 90% of people, it's, you know, I only get this week off work. This is what I have. And so the last thing that you want in the back of your mind is this, well, the moon's not going to be right, you know, and everything. It's just like, we've killed on full moons. We've killed on half moons. We've killed on stormy days, sunny days. It just depends on that mood of that elk at that time. And I think that where we kind of say cover ground. So we talked about fishing a little bit ago, and our model of hunting is a lot like fishing, except we're speed fishing. We are looking for a biter. We're going to go down that stream. We're not going to hit. We know there's 5 fish in that hole. We're not going to fish that hole all day and just trying to get one. We are going to cover that river and look for that one that's just hungry and that just right when you come by first time it bites. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a biter. And that's why the cover ground technique works so well, is because we're just covering ground looking for that one elk. We may we may go by, I don't know how many elk in that time period, but that one that wants to play our game, that's the one that we're going to try to capitalize on.
Yeah. The only thing that moon phase changes us some is like activity levels per se of what's going on during the day based on what the moon does. And for us, we've had really good experience midday when it is full moon. Those elk seems like they were up late, they bed early, and then that 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, mid-morning, later morning, that's when some activity starts to grow with those elk. And we've had really good success on those midday madness per se on a full moon. And it's like on a new moon, then it's a daylight scenario, and they're going to be on their feet up and moving. And, so I that's kind of the one observation that I've seen over the years.
Now, if you're going to do a backcountry hunt and you don't have a vehicle to get around, you're just left foot, right foot in it. Does that change your game at all? If you can't necessarily just eat up ridge after ridge and basin after basin?
I'd like to say yes, but no, it doesn't.
Really?
We've definitely, and this is where our mentality, we used to be like, okay, we're going to go in for 10 days. We got 10 days worth of gear, food, all that. Well, day number 4, we've like pretty much turned over every stone that's physically in this area that we feel comfortable that we kill one to pack it out, So now our mentality is like, all right, we're going to go in on this for 4 days, 3 nights worth of food, and we're going to cover every little bit of it as fast or, as thorough as we can. And we're either going to kill one or we're moving on to a different place, based on that. So
always have numerous spots. Never just go, we're elk hunting here this year. Go, we're going to elk hunt here. And if we don't find them, we're going to go here. And then if we don't find them, we're going to go here. And there's been a lot of times we've taken all night long to drive clear across the state of Colorado for some stupid idea that we had that there was elk in this other spot, and show up and hike in a trailhead and shoot an elk. It's just, do not be afraid to move. Do not be afraid.
Yeah. And that's one of my big issues with deep backcountry hunts. Like you're committed to that. And if that's the experience you want, great. But I commonly tell people the reason to hunt backcountry, like sure enough backcountry, is that it's easier once you get there because those animals have seen fewer people. The hard thing about hunting backcountry is getting there.
Yeah, not anymore though. Everybody's there.
I know, and it's such a silly thing.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of meat gets wasted. I don't support that. It's incredibly challenging to carry a bull for 4 miles. 4 miles. Like that turns into 30 miles by the time you've gotten it done. And those are heavy miles too. So if you think you're going to bomb in 14 miles deep somewhere and get an elk out, like you're crazy. You're going to probably lose some meat.
Yeah.
We kind of started out like that a little bit as far as when we started cutting our teeth out of state of Oregon. We would hike back in 8 miles and then set up camp and everything. We have the luxury of 5-6 guys though. So it's like you kill an elk, it's one trip, everybody. And you can actually divvy up the meat, and it actually is better, but it's still a huge undertaking. And that's where just in the last, I would say 3 years, people have seen us go from that 8 mile zone and suck it way back. There's a middle zone in there in between the quote unquote backcountry guys to the road hunter. There's that middle zone that's 1/2 mile to 3 miles. And on the long end that there's a lot of elk in that, a lot of opportunity in that.
Yep. I agree with that. And I'm almost hesitant to say it because I like having the front country to myself right now, but it's the reality. Like, the horse guys aren't going to stop until they're 6 miles deep, and the truck guys, they're not going to get a mile from their truck. They're just not. And they probably shouldn't. A mile's a lot. But if you're a mile down a trail and 1/2 mile off a trail, you're probably by yourself. Not all the time, but probably.
Are we calling ourselves the front country hunters now? Is that what? That's not a term. I like it.
I'm all about hunting the front, dude. All about it.
Love it.
And, if you start to think of it from an ecological standpoint, that stuff that's closer to the edge of something, if we're talking about the front, we're talking about edge habitat. That's critical habitat. That middle ground that becomes a little bit monogamous in its vegetation type and terrain type, it's not as special. It's not as critical habitat to these animals. So, once you get up to the tree line and you get back into the meadows and stuff like that again, that's more edge habitat. That's the different thing. But, there's a lot of elk in the valley, but they're not in the valley during the day. So, hunt the front, get on the edge.
Love it.
It's very well said. I mean, and a good observation, because I never thought on the terms of edges, but you can kind of get lost in the mass in between and all that stuff. So
what's a mistake you made last year that you're not going to make this year?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. What's a mistake? Individually or as a team?
I mean, Trevor couldn't make it. We don't need to talk about Trevor.
Okay. Oh man. Kody, you got something?
I think one mistake that we made last year, like in the same back to that hunt in Wyoming, is we watched elk for 3 days in the same spot before we went after them. And hindsight, like day one, okay, there they are. Let's figure out how to make a plan and go after them. And we kind of like went through that, like, oh, let's observe versus like, you can't kill them from 1,000 yards away or a mile away, glassing them. You got to put yourself in that position to kill. So, I would say, because what happened is, or what could have happened is, someone else could have been seeing those same elk and they could have gone in there the next morning or that afternoon. And instead we sat back and watched just because it was cool to see. There was these nice bulls on this bench just living, doing their thing, and we observed too much. So, I think it correlates to that time in the field, like put yourself in the best position for the longest amount of time that you can in order to make things go right. And it's all feels good and dandy to glass up elk, but you ain't going to kill them doing that. So
one of the ways that, I've interpreted how you have influenced other hunters is you've made people want to hunt the entire season. And I think that's fantastic. You learn so much from hunting the entire season, but most of these guys are hunting single states, and I support that 100%, hunt where you can. But how do you manage fatigue throughout the season? Because that's a real thing. I mean, I am utterly exhausted by the end of archery season, and then I've still got rifle seasons on top of each other to go. But typically I'm getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night as a guide, which is a little bit different. There's extra things that I have to do as a guide that you don't have to do when you're hunting privately. But since you guys are filming, there's extra things that you have to do as well. So how do you manage that? When are you sleeping? When are you taking 0 days? Like how does it work?
We don't take too many 0 days. It depends. I mean, like when we first did Land of the Free, we were 5 states all the way through. And it was 53 days straight of hunting. And you would use nights to travel in between state to state and go for the next state, because you were meeting up with a whole other company. So what we did is we met up with different companies through and collaborated with every 10 days. So you get there and you're maybe dog tired, but they've got fresh legs. They're ready. They've been waiting all season for you to get there and go. And so you got to just kind of, strap them up and go. And I guess it's cliche a little bit to say a little bit, but a lot of it's just mind frame. You just have to just kind of grind on and get through it. I mean, all of us do training and stuff like that before season and things, but a lot of it is just having the mindset of just, we're going to do this, we're going to make this happen, and we're just going to get it done,
Yeah. And I think the one thing that over the time we've learned too is like, don't beat ourselves up for sleeping in the morning. I mean, in this case, like we've definitely had some great daylight encounters with elk, but we've had more midday encounters. And, we use the mornings more on the location side of it to try to figure out where they're going to get them killed. And so I know people have made comments like, it's daylight and you guys are just getting up. It's like, well, in this case, we are backpacked in. So, it's not like we've got to cover 3 to 4 miles to get into where we want to start hunting. We're already there. So 7 a.m. sounds great, and having that kind of like, it's okay for that. And mentally, we're going to grind it out all day. And that's, I think for us typically is we don't do the early mornings back at camp at 10 a.m. Don't go out again until 5 p.m. It's like we might start at 7, but we're going to hunt all day long through the whole day, and just pace yourself. I think having the fatigue is one that is pushed through. Like Trent said, the mental fortitude to, man, this is a grind, and we're going to make it to the top of this hill, but it might take us an extra half hour. We're going to take a break and have a laugh and enjoy the moment versus, instead of just worry about the destination.
You asked a little bit ago the question of what was a mistake that you made, last year or whatnot. I think honestly, I've just been thinking about that since you asked it. And it's just like, it kind of goes with this whole question as well. It's just like, I would say it's when we don't hunt as a team, when we try to get individual with it and we try to push something that shouldn't be pushed at the time and not pull it back and say, hey guys, what do you think about this? What do you think we should do? And really like break it down as a team. And because we succeed as a team and we fail as a team all the time. I mean, that happens every single year. But when we succeed, it's not, hey, Kody killed a 380-inch elk. It's we killed a 380-inch elk. Or I did, actually, if it's 380, never mind.
280.
280. Oh, 280, that's right. 280. Dang it. But no, it's just, I think it goes back to a lot of things that we do is what has gained our success is working together as a team for one common goal. And it doesn't matter who is behind that bow, who's pulling that trigger on that gun or whatever. It's we all got there as a team. And I think that can be a big, big success and failure if you don't look at it that way.
We're joking about scores a little bit here, but my favorite elk hunt that I ever guided, which I don't know, I think I probably put around 130 elk on the ground at this point guiding. We shot a calf. And, if you're going to use a score metric, like there's the spectrum of bulls and then there's cows and then there's calves right at the very bottom. And it was for a dad and his son, and the dad was sick and he was going in for a surgery on a Thursday that he had like a 10% chance of surviving. And we had a Tuesday to hunt. And we blew these elk up a bunch of times. He wasn't able to get in a position and get comfortable enough to take a shot. And they were about to leave and be gone forever. And this cow stopped in the timber. And I said, there she is, let her eat. And he shot, and a calf like 5 feet away from her went down like a rock. And he'd missed by 5 feet and shot that calf in the head. And it's an antlerless elk tag, boys. And I could not have been happier. I think it was only his second elk ever, and he'd hunted, pretty much his whole life. It was incredible. And the experience that those guys got to have at that time in their lives, that father and son, it was incomparable. And then he ended up surviving the surgery and got to live a little bit longer. And it was just a really special thing. And I'm critical of scores, but I'm also appreciative of them. But I really want to encourage people not to let somebody else's standards of a number affect their experience.
100,000%. I just to add on that, I think people, especially now with social media, YouTube, people sharing content, like they see success of another person and then base the only way that they could be successful is what that other person experienced and want that. And Lord knows we've killed our boatload of spikes, little rags, anything legal, opportunity first. It's, and would not have it any other way, and have no qualms on
We don't discriminate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the first time I watched one of your guys' videos, and I think it was one where Trent shot a spike. And I was like, yeah, I like these guys. These guys are good.
That might have happened.
Fuzzy horn one in Wyoming. That was
I could actually drag that spike by hand, guts, feathers, and all. It was that small. It was that small.
Grew up eating spike meat. You know, our only over-the-counter rifle hunt for the longest time was a spike only tag. And you know, you couldn't get a hunt every year. Right. So if you wanted to get an elk every year, which we needed, you're going spike hunting. And I thought, like, this is what elk meat is. And then when I grew up a little bit and got to hunt some bigger bulls, I was like, oh, this is what elk meat is too. I'm gonna go back to eating spikes.
You grew up on the best of the best.
It is
good.
Okay. Man, calling is like the thing that makes elk what it is for the most part. I mean, anytime you can call an animal and you can communicate with it and manipulate its behavior with sounds that you're making, makes for a really special hunting experience. And I think that's what draws people to waterfowl. That's what draws people to turkeys. And, you know, there's some really terrific animals out there in the world that we hunt, but our experience with them is different if you're just stalking that animal or waiting to ambush that animal versus actually engaging with them the way we do with elk. And the more you hunt, the more you're going to find little glitches in gear. And then you're going to go out and you're going to shop for something that's, you know, a little bit better. And sometimes there's nothing out there. And you guys ran into a situation where you felt like there wasn't the calls out there that you wanted, that you needed. So you took the initiative to start a call company. Now I want to hear more about it.
And it's been a journey. Been a journey for sure. No, I think for us, it's like always trying to innovate. You know, I mean, I had a design background, and so, you know, we could draw this up. I remember making my first goose call when I was like 19 years old. I had a buddy turn it on a lathe for me, and so it's like,
was it made out of jet boat aluminum?
No, that one wasn't. No, but yeah. So I think for us, it was just like, what else could be done in that space? And we've really tried to bring ideas, and we've played around with a lot of options, trying to get a better sound, louder, you know, what's more realistic? How do we do a better job at the mission of trying to call an elk in? And so it's been a fun journey for us, and you know, it's just in its infancy. I mean, we have a lot of lofty goals and ambitions to where and how we want to go forward, but it's been a fun one over the last year.
And it's not just the last year. It's been something that's been on our minds forever, for all this time. And it, you know, everybody always says, man, I wish I would have, I wish I would have, the wish I would have we had is like that wish we would have started this years ago when we wanted to start this, when we actually had the ambition and actually had this dream and this, you know, instead of just like settling, you know. I think, man, we talk about that all the time, right? As far as, oh man, if we'd only done this
10 years ago,
such and such.
We had the idea and like, let's do it. And then we all got chicken and scared and said, nope, we're not going to do it. So,
yep. And anyway, so it's really cool to see it to come to fruition. That being said, they said manufacturing would be fun. They said it was going to be easy. They said, oh, we'll have something to you in a couple of weeks. Well, yeah, it's not the way it goes, especially in COVID times. So it's been a journey trying to find every little piece. Because I mean, if you look at like what we're trying to do, it's not just getting a plastic bugle tube from wherever and in a factory to here. It's getting everything that makes up a reed, you know, having all the aluminum parts and then designing that aluminum part, testing it, making sure it works, and then getting the latex from wherever the latex comes from, and then getting the tape, wherever tape, it just, all these tiny little things that to make up this one call has to be all in order. And so we've ran into some little snafus. Ooh, right there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's curvy.
It's
Yeah.
curvy. Yeah.
You guys can't see what I'm seeing, and that's okay, but it's curvy.
Yeah, little art. That's been the one thing that's been, we just went through, like Trent said, trial and error. How do we make it easier for people that can't blow a diaphragm? Like let's go through all of it. How do we make the easiest cow call known to man that sounds good? And so it's been fun. Like I said, it's been a good challenge. It's outside our wheelhouse of like, we know how to go chase elk and have fun doing that. Well, now let's figure out how to manufacture something that can help everyone get in the woods and be successful.
And the biggest thing that we didn't want to do is just to make another call, just to have another call on the market. Just to, if we were going to do it, we wanted to innovate. And that's what we've spent so much time, like our external cow calls, they're built out of acrylic where the sound it's built off of a duck call frame. So where the sound actually distributes through the end of the call and just doesn't come off the plate of the call, like a lot of the others on the market. So there's everything that we're doing, we're innovating and heading towards a direction to change the style of hunting, as far as if it's not just make the cleaner sound, but to make it easier for people to do.
And you guys have very, very intelligently partnered with Eric Strand for this, who is, I'd go so far as to say a legendary caller.
Yeah.
And, he's got the experience with call companies. He's a really nice guy and he works hard. So not only is this about elk, we're talking what other species are we going to be calling it with born and raised calls?
Yeah. So the whole gambit of waterfowl, from honkers, lessers, cackler, specks, mallards, the whole gambit there, and then into the turkey side of life, bulls of the spring, the as I like to equate it.
Easy.
I know I'm on the wrong call for this.
Wow.
But okay, here's a question. We talked through turkey camp. This was a hot topic for us every night. So if you could only pick one to hunt the rest of your life, would it be an elk-sized turkey or a turkey-sized elk?
Turkey-sized elk for sure. Yeah, that sounds like
bingo.
So much fun. But no question in my mind.
The opposite. Could you imagine a velociraptor that gobbled?
Here it comes.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I mean, I think we tried that once historically, but no, man, that sounds bad. That sounds scary to me. And I've hunted lots of scary stuff, and that I'm glad I did that. But yeah, oh my gosh, a 20-pound elk, that sounds amazing. I have one of those miniature 3D elk targets. It's third size. I love that thing. Yeah. And it's so humbling. Like it is the destroyer of arrows and confidence. And it's such a mind game, because you're like, oh, I'm shooting at an elk. And like, it's like, you're not. It's yeah. No, I think baby elk sounds fun. I think that would be, yeah. I wish elk were smaller. I'll go ahead and say it. I wish elk were smaller.
Wow.
Yeah, they're too heavy.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, that is a fact.
I'm also assuming at this point that we could shoot more than one in a year. Maybe we could get 3 elk tags in a year. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Some states you can allow the turkey thing. You can just go get another one and get another one. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good to me. Maybe we can draw Elon Musk into the hunting scene, and he can start genetically modifying these things, and we can get our baby elk population going, and pick your Hawaiian island. I feel like that's the right place to do it.
Get a good start on the Oregon coast here. Oh boy.
Okay. Mistakes that you see people making. I feel like this is a great thing. Everybody kind of likes to see themselves as an individual and like, oh, I don't make the same mistakes as everybody else. My experience is a lot of people do make the same mistakes, and you can start pulling on the thread of those commonalities. What's been your observation with that?
Man, you could go down a ton of roads with this. first, number one, I think, is just go. Get out there. Don't think that you can't. Don't think. I think there's so many people out there that think, well, it's too hard. The mountains are way too big. And then those people, you take it that step further, that do go out there. Day one, they just work their ass off and just try to hike like hell. And then pretty soon they're laid up for 2 days and they can't really hardly walk, and they get back in their camper and they sleep for 2 days because they're so exhausted. I mean, one, get out there. I mean, anybody can do this. And I think that's what we try to just shout from the rooftops is anybody can hunt elk. Anybody can. Like James, you were saying, I mean, you could get 100 yards off the road and you could be hunting elk. I mean, really, you could. And it's just the whole mentality of I can't afford the time off. Honestly, it's not that much. If you think about that, you just budget your time for your time allotted for season, or, it's too expensive. I can't afford an exo pack, and I can't afford Hanwha boots, and I can't afford all these things. Coming from me, who gets all that stuff. Yeah, that's easy for me to say, but it's true. I mean, Kody did his first, all of us did our first stuff, backpacks with, the Boy Scout backpack on, and that's, you can find at Salvation Army or wherever, I mean, it's the barrier to entry is all over the map. It just, honestly, it's just going and doing it and getting that mind frame of just going and conquering something.
I feel like that's a really good point. And even to specify that point a little bit more, to make it clear, if spending money on gear is the thing that's holding you back, military surplus is a really good option, right?
Great
this
option.
Is stuff that's been tested, tried and true over the years. And most of us got our start using military surplus gear. And the stuff that's military surplus now, and this is strange for me, it's the stuff that I was using in the military a decade ago. It's good stuff, and that in many ways was the pinnacle of gear at that time. So yeah, you can get a great pack that the Marines were using a decade ago for $200, and a lot of times cheaper than that.
Less than that.
You can buy a set of wool pants that are $20 that will stand up to really bad winter conditions. Don't let that be the thing that holds you back. Don't let anything hold you back, and don't put elk up on a pedestal as like this unachievable thing. It can be done. I promise. Like people do it every year that, that are in a skill deficit.
It's amazing the people like from Pennsylvania that have never even really seen the Rocky Mountains that'll come out here and say, hey guys, you encouraged me to do it. I killed my first elk this year. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think just to touch on the mistake side of it, I think people, once you're in the field, is being indecisive, not making a decision, scared to make the wrong decision. So then they don't make any decision at all, and then everything unravels because they didn't move or didn't attack versus, they're on their heels playing defense versus that offense side of it. And then the number one easiest, I would say, common rookie mistake. A bull's coming in, it's bugling, they jump behind the tree to grab cover, and the bull comes in at 25 yards, stands there, and they can't shoot it because they have no clear view, or, so I think that's a pretty easy one. I think set up in the shadow, trust your camo or your position, and, get the shot versus hunker down and hide. And I mean, it's fun to look and giggle and see, oh, there's an elk right there, but you're not going to kill it.
That's a great point. Like when I think as hunters, and I think everybody on this call can attest to this, you turn from a hunter to a killer. And there is that moment as far as the bull's coming in and you have your shooting lanes picked, but he stops just a little bit short of your lane. The hunter is going to wait for him to get in the lane. The killer is going to know that he can take that very slight step to the left and shoot him. And that's when you kind of turn that corner, I think, into don't be afraid to maybe screw up in order to make something happen. Archery doesn't always have the elk broadside, leg forward, ready, just, 10 ring at 25 yards. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes you have to make that opportunity. And I think a lot of people get scared to do that. And a lot of people leave the woods unsuccessful because they don't just turn into that killer instinct where, okay, maybe I can get away with this. This is my opportunity.
All right, Trent, I'm going to throw one at you here.
I love this.
Okay. So the leg forward thing bothers me because it's wrong. Okay. So you've got the scapula, the shoulder blade coming back. Okay. And then you've got, I don't know what bone it is in an elk, but let's call it a humerus, because that's what it would be in a human, right? The upper arm bone. What happens when their leg goes forward is the bottom of that scapula rotates down, and that big heavy bone, that arrow stopping bone, actually covers up more of the kill zone when the leg is forward than it does when the leg is back. So pull up a picture of an elk skeleton and you can look at this and visualize it, but leg forward is not ideal.
I knew this podcast was it had to have one snafu and it had to have one James teaching moment in it, I'm sure. And, I almost got all the way through this damn thing, and it finally came to fruition. So I'm going to start pulling up pictures and sending them to you.
It doesn't really matter, but I've just heard that a bunch of times, and it would make sense from a human anatomy perspective, but from an elk anatomy, people really don't understand what's going on underneath that skin, and they don't understand that kill zone as well as they should. And we've kind of been drinking some old Kool-Aid with the shooting behind the shoulder, aiming right behind the crease, aiming in the crease thing for a long time. And I really encourage people to start understanding that elk anatomy. And there's a lot of really beautiful pictures out there that help people understand that.
Yeah, it's quite the experience of, I've never done this until Montana 2018. We boned it out, leaving the quarter attached, and took the layers off just to see everything. And it's pretty interesting to see how that structure lays.
Yeah. Constant learning. Yeah. Is there one part of the season or another that you're really excited about this year that folks should also be eager about tuning into so that they can watch what happens?
Yeah, we have some pretty dynamite tags this year. We've burned, I think I added it all up, I think we burned 64 years of points. Woo. I think, this year. So we've got some really, really premier tags. So it should be some awesome hunts. Should be some really, really good bugle action and elk footage is what we are obviously hoping for.
Yeah. Yep. It's a good year. It's the year of Oregon for us. We're staying home, which is really exciting.
Super exciting.
Yeah. You guys are going to be spending some time in my neck of the woods, and I am excited for you. I'm really excited for you. And it takes a different kind of courage to wait for, over 20 years to hunt a place. And you guys have done it. And now it's time to reap the harvest.
Is it going to be awesome?
It's going to be awesome. You're going to have an incredible experience. My hope is that you come away from it and you say, that was worth it. That was worth everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
So, all right, gentlemen. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I appreciate you very much. Encourage folks to follow you. And then, if you go to this podcast description, you're going to see links to everything that you need to follow Born and Raised and watch their videos. And you can start to look for some of these awesome calls and this gear to start coming up. That, man, a call is just something that can give you that experience with an animal that does change your life, that gives you that lifelong memory, and it makes the difference. And the perfect call is not out there, and the perfect call is different for every single person. But if I see a call on the shelf that I haven't tried before, I'm going to buy it and give it a shot, because I'm still waiting for that call that is just right. My hope is that it's yours.
We'll send you some.
I look forward to it. All right, gentlemen. Well, thanks again. Any closing thoughts?
Just go out and enjoy it. Like I think I touched on it earlier in the podcast. Enjoy the journey as much as the destination. I think people get so hung up in the have to kill, and that's the only way of measuring success. And I think you earlier in the podcast talked, it was a successful hunt just recently that you had with your hunter. Just soak it all in, learn from it, enjoy it, live in the moment.
I would agree.
Yeah. All right, cool.
I live in an old cabin with bad to non-existent insulation and wood heat. That cabin can see snow every month of the year and needs a good amount of firewood stacked in the woodshed to carry through the colder months. This spring, as my woodpile turned to smoke and ash, I noticed something metal pushing out of the decades of sawdust and bark. I kicked at it and unearthed a Stanley thermos. The cup was missing, and it showed more worn stainless steel than green. There were dents in the metal, and the handle looked like a puppy had chewed on it, but it still hadn't leaked the old coffee I could feel slosh inside. It took me back to memories of cutting firewood with my dad, waking up early for an elk hunt, or going out to the canyons to gather cattle. A Stanley thermos has the durability to survive whatever hard work you throw at it. You may find it carries memories as well as coffee. Learn more about their new and classic line of products at stanley1913.com or at your local sporting goods store. And catch you next week. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share the show with a friend. You can also rate the podcast and leave a review. Your support allows me to keep doing what I love, which is meeting incredible folks and sharing their stories with you. For more content and photos, follow the show on Instagram at Six Ranch Podcast or me at Six Ranch Outfitters. This episode was produced by Emily Brannigan, with original music written and performed by Justin Hay. Art for the Six Ranch Podcast was created by John Chatelain and digitized by Celia Christofferson. Tune in every Monday for a brand new episode of the Six Ranch Podcast. I'll catch you next week.